All right, welcome back. So we are finished with chapter 6. We're going into chapter 7. There's a couple big bullet points I want to definitely talk about, as well as economies of scale and the economics of scope. And those are kind of the big things that are in chapter 7. I think all of you can recall from the reading, there's not a lot of material in either chapters. I think they're pretty brief. They do a fair, decent job explaining it. But again, I think it gets overly complicated with some of the terminology, such as the big differences of economies of scale versus economics of scope. All right, I'm just talking at a very high level. Economics of scope is something a company does that brings in multiple different products, different shares, different things. To me, to make sense of it, economics of scope is Apple. Apple, for their economics of scope, has a cell phone, has a MacBook, has accessories. Their economies of scale, they work on one specific item, and that we'll call it just an iPhone. And that's all they ever did, and that was it. So their economies of scale is an iPhone, and they're trying to become the best they could at it. But they didn't. So they did economics or economies of scope. So let me pull up the PowerPoint. So nice tonight. I was walking across campus at 5:30 at night, and it was still sunny out. And I was like, all right, you feel the warmth of the sun. Feels warmer out and it's sunny out. It's a good feeling. This time next week, we'll all be off. But when you come back, it'll still be light up. It's box change. All right, before we get started, that reminds me, for the asynchronous students, there's no class next week. Everybody's on spring break. So there is no school. Right? I know the undergrad, there's no school, so grad as well. So you are all on break. So no recording next week, no live class, nothing of that nature as well. All right, economies of scale allow for expansion without additional of costs. That iPhone example that I just shared is exactly that. So you can take parts, you can use electronics and create something new without reinventing the wheel. So you can take ideas. If a chip already works for a phone, you can kind of use it in a MacBook. And then if you have glass that you need to cut down for an iPhone, why not make the glass bigger? But you still have glass, and now you have a MacBook. And that's kind of the direction that this goes in. How companies try to create ideas and products a bit differently. Investing in infrastructure may be required to create economies of scale. Do they need more room to do this? Do they need different machines, different products to get imported in as well? Again, I like the Apple product because that's literally what happened with Apple. They created one thing, they actually created the MacBook, and then from there they said, well, we have these parts, let's try to expand. And then also they created a phone. They did a very good job using the technology for a computer into a phone. It wasn't much for them to change. Now, I will share with everyone, it's kind of superior intelligent, which all companies have really done in the last 5-6 years, is come out with different operating systems that just get pushed to you. And I think that's brilliant. You don't need a new chip. An iPhone 16 operates the same as an iPhone 11. You do the update, you get a push. So there's a big value for getting products like that these days. We were talking about gaming consoles. They update as well, and they come out with new updated software, so you don't have to pay for that. And that's how you can justify these costs of spending $400, $500, $600 on things. It's like, well, now I don't need to buy a new console because they get pushed to me. Well, now I'm seeing companies charging you for these pushes as well. Apple hasn't done it yet, but there are companies that are starting to charge you. Well, you want to update it, fine. Here's $5, here's $10 to update it. So it's no longer going to be an inclusive product. It's going to start adding more. Would you still pay for it as a consumer? Well, yeah. If it's minimal, why not? It's cheaper than getting a new console. It's cheaper than going with a new phone. All right, increased productivity from division
Are you on
labor.
the PowerPoint right now? Because I can't see anything.
Yes, thank you. At least it was only one slide.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were just
On it.
talking or if you had the PowerPoint up.
Devin, if it wasn't for you, it's always you and Julie. JT in class always yells at me too. It's all blending in. Thank you, Devin, for telling me. So let me back up real quick. This is, where was I? This is just the slide I was showing, so just this one. What was it, 2 weeks ago? I think financial management, and I realized I was like halfway through. And so I said, hey, are you sharing? I'm like, no, we're like an hour and a half into it. Yeah, and financial management, we're running like 8:30, 8:40. All right, at this point, where was I? I'm gonna get lost myself. All right, economies of scale, that's where I'm at. Well, I talk about economies of scale, but before I talk about it, I want to share a video with each of you as well. There's 2 of them, one on economies of scale and the other one on the economies of scope. Pretty similar to what we just had a conversation about, but I think both videos do an excellent job as well. So let me share them real briefly. They're only 3-4 minutes long.
Please. Today we're going to be talking about a key microeconomic concept known as economies of scale. With that said, let's get right into it. All right, so let's start off answering perhaps the most important question you're wondering. What are economies of scale? Well, put in simple terms, economies of scale are cost advantages obtained by companies when their production becomes more efficient. Companies can achieve economies of scale by increasing production and lowering costs, and this is possible since the costs are spread over a larger number of goods. Does that sound confusing? Allow me to explain. The size of the business often matters when it comes to economies of scale. The larger the company, the more the cost savings. Economies of scale can be both internal and external. Internal economies of scale are based on management decisions, including things like accounting, information technology, and marketing, while external has to do with the outside factors like the cost of acquiring labor or intermediate goods to be used in production. Economies of scale are an important concept for all businesses and all industries. It explains why large companies oftentimes have a competitive advantage over smaller companies. Have you ever wondered why a smaller business charges more for a similar or even identical product sold by a larger company? That's because the cost per unit depends on how much the company produces, as well as how much it costs them to produce. Larger companies can produce more by spreading the cost of production over a larger amount of goods. And an industry may also be able to dictate the cost of a product if several different companies are producing similar goods within the industry. Now, there are 3 main reasons why economies of scale have led to lower per unit costs. First, specialization of labor and more integrated technology boosts output volumes. Second, lower per unit costs can come from bulk orders from suppliers, as well as lower costs of borrowing capital from banks or other loan providers. Third, spreading internal function costs across more units produced and sold helps to reduce costs. A company can create a diseconomy of scale when it becomes too large and chases an economy of scale, but we'll give an example of that in just a second. As a dramatic example of economies of scale, think of a smartphone. How much money do you think it would cost for you, yes, you, the person watching this video right now, to build a single smartphone all by yourself? Well, after considering the cost of hardware, materials, and the knowledge you'll need to achieve such a feat, I'm willing to bet the cost is somewhere in the ballpark of quite a lot of money. Definitely more than the $500 to $600 range that it costs Apple or Samsung. But why does it cost you so much more to make? Well, in this example, it's quite obvious. You don't have the parts, the manufacturing capabilities, and likely the expertise to make smartphones as efficiently as these companies do. So while they're pumping out hundreds of millions of smartphones each year and raking in a hefty profit per individual phone, you're probably in debt just from creating one all by yourself. What about diseconomies of scale? Restaurant kitchens are often used to illustrate how economies of scale are limited. More cooks in a small space get in each other's way and become less efficient. This is the case even though intuitively more cooks should equal more output. Have you ever heard of the phrase, too many cooks spoils the broth? Well, this is more or less what that saying is getting at. Economies of scale are advantages that sometimes occur as a result of increasing the size of a business. For example, a business might enjoy an economy of scale concerning its bulk purchasing. By buying a larger number of products at once, it could negotiate a lower per unit price than its competitors, as buying in bulk often results in a discounted price per unit. Put simply, economies of scale can be achieved in 2 ways. First, a company can realize internal economies of scale by reorganizing the way their resources, such as equipment and personnel, are distributed within the company. That is, making the company more internally efficient results in larger profit margins. Second, a company can realize external economies of scale by growing in size relative to their competitors and then using that increased size to engage in competitive practices such as negotiating discounts for bulk purchases. Economies of scale are important because they help provide businesses with a competitive advantage in their industry. Companies will therefore try to realize economies of scale whenever possible, just as investors will try to identify economies of scale when selecting investments. This will lead to companies striving to become more and more efficient, which is generally good for the economy and the markets as a whole. We hope that this video helped you to understand the concept of economies of scale.
Alright, so hopefully it helps a little bit. He does talk really fast. But it really breaks down why they exist, what it actually means. I don't think I could even come up with an idea of creating a cell phone. I don't know how I could create the technology to do that, so yeah, I don't know if that would relate to me so much. But I think just breaking it down visually, it helps you to see it. The next one I want to talk about is the economies of scope, the difference behind it.
Hi there. Here's a concept that sounds very similar to economies of scale, but is actually called economies of scope. So what's the difference? Well, firstly, what are economies of scope? Well, this also involves a business experiencing a fall in unit costs. But the reason why unit costs fall is because the business produces or supplies a wider range of products, rather than just specializing in one product or service. And this is why unit costs would fall, because of this wider range of products. Let's just give you 2 or 3 examples to hopefully help explain how this works. Now, for example, why is it that Amazon is highly efficient with very low unit costs for each product that it ships out from its warehouses? Well, one of the reasons for this, an important reason, is that it offers a vast range of products from its warehouses, therefore spreading the cost of the warehouse capacity and machinery across a much wider range of products. Similarly, a business like a large hotel complex, rather than just selling rooms that people stay in overnight, if it offers a wider range of products and services, using its facilities for different uses, for example, conferences, weddings, speeches, that kind of stuff, then it's able to spread the costs, the fixed costs of operating a hotel over a wider range of products, and therefore economies of scope come into play. And similarly, this also works with businesses like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Heinz, Nestle, all the big multinationals who have large product portfolios. As that product portfolio gets wider and larger, economies of scope arise because some fixed costs get spread over each of the individual products in the portfolio. Finally, another way to think about this is the large hypermarkets, the supermarkets. If it was just selling fruit and veg, the unit cost of fruit and veg will take into account all of the fixed costs of the supermarket. But because the hypermarket or the supermarket offers a wide range of products and services, then the unit cost of selling those products and services can also be lowered. So this is what we mean by economies of scope. It's very similar to the idea of economies of scale, but this is specifically where unit costs fall as a result of this wider range of products. Hopefully that's useful. It's an important term, well worth remembering the dip.
Alright, so that really goes back to the Apple theory that I came up with a while ago, where it's just, you can have the scale, you create one simple product, you move on from there, or scope, and you actually have it, marry other things. I like the example of the hotel, because I'll be honest, before I watched that video today, I never really thought of a hotel like that. How they're, you have their convention centers and, he mentioned beach, but maybe beach access or something like that. And what they're trying to do is create revenue streams differently. But there's still a cost that goes into it, such as a bigger facility, you need employees, you need food, you need refrigerators, you need chefs, you need all those other things if you have conferences, but they're trying to add other values. Then it comes into, if that's a success, a kind of success plan for every business, why doesn't every business do this? And that's one thing that's always interesting, is if we know that economies of scope, having multiple products created the same and, utilizing all the resources creates revenue, why don't all companies do this? And I've always wondered that question. And I think it really comes down to them focusing on one thing, and they've always been told, do what you're really good at, and that's it. Like, can you expand off of that a little bit to create additional revenue? And I would like to think you can. But then again, if you do that, you're going to play another slippery slope. Do you have the resources to do it? Do you have the labor behind you? And are you comfortable expanding? Some companies aren't. Well, it's interesting. I just think, I find that to be a very interesting concept. Economies of scope. So I went through economies of scale, kind of through those videos, but to hone in a little bit more is the law of diminishing marginal returns is shortly a short run phenomenon. Meaning the longer returns you have out there, it's going to supersede itself due to the cost, due to the varying factors that are associated with it. All right, the other side of it is. Well, I kind of skip down to the scope. The economies of scope is between two products. It's not really between two products, it's between two or more products. If the cost of producing them jointly is less than total cost producing them separately makes sense, but does it always make sense? And I don't always agree with it as well. So if it makes sense to make these two products, should every company do it? I don't think you should. I still believe also if you're really good at something and it's making you money, just stay doing it. And sometimes you get in over your head. Right? We've all been in over heads of different things in life, and it usually ends up badly. So just because you can do it doesn't mean you can. Economies of scope emanate from economies of scale is, in some common component, they do, but the scope is a bigger picture than one item by itself. Questions? Pretty simple concepts, I think, overall. But this economies of scope is the cost of producing two products jointly is higher than the total cost of making them together. So it just means the opposite of it. That's all it is. So if you see this on a test at some point, this economies of scope is it costs more to do it. So maybe it doesn't make sense. Where economies of scope, it makes sense. That's all. All right. That's really chapter 7 wraps it up. I mean, it's those two big key concepts in there. I think the book does a good job, like I said, going through it, but I do think at some points it gets a little too deep in the trenches where it kind of makes it convoluted. All right, I didn't really have anything else to go over with that. So for next week, we don't have class, but we do have, I wrote it down, I think it's chapter 9. So please read chapter 9 over the next week or so. And we don't have class, but that's what we will go through that Tuesday. There is a discussion board for the asynchronous students, for the ones attending no. And your test is available Friday. So Friday, March 21st. It's not Friday till Tuesday, the 18th. I did extend it on purpose because some of you may be traveling for spring break. You may be going home, whatever you're doing. I don't want you having to focus on this. Right? I really want you to relax, enjoy your time, do what you need to do. But feel free, if you want to get your test in, go for it. It will be 30 multiple choice questions cumulative from the first 7 chapters. Right? Everything that we've gone through to this point. But it's a test, it's not a midterm exam. Questions? No? All right. Other than that, we are good. You have time back. You can do what you want to do. You want to go home? You want to hang out with me? Go for it. I'm going to be here. I am using this time to get caught up in my schoolwork myself. So I'm not going home. All right, other than that, you folks have a good night. I will turn off online as well. Devin, thank you. You have a nice night, sir.
Thank you.
And asynchronous, have a nice night. I will see some of you tomorrow.